Greetings and welcome to week 13 in our online course in the Gospel of Matthew. The project or the passage we will work on this week is Matthew chapter 11. A couple of things I want you to be aware of as you read commentaries and do your work and think about the issues of this chapter. It's a little bit shorter than, for example, chapter 12 will come up this following week. And it's got three sort of distinct sections. And before you get to the first section, do note verse 1, when Jesus had finished instructing. And so this is another one of those formula that originally Benjamin Bacon had recognized that gave rise to the alternating narrative teaching block analysis of the structure of Matthew. And Bacon of the so-called Pentateuchal theory of Matthew structure, the five-book structure. You know from, for example, my commentary that I'm not convinced of the Pentateuchal sense of it, but that those descriptors, now when Jesus had finished, at the end of each of the teaching blocks, is a key to the structure of that alternating narrative and teaching block material. The first section has to do with the messengers from John the Baptist and the question of whether they, John and they, should believe that Jesus was the Messiah or should wait for another. The phrase, "Are you the one who is to come?" The phrase, "the one who is to come," was kind of popular or common parlance to describe the Messiah. And so their question really is, are you really the one we've been looking for, or what's going on here? John's in prison. The kind of liberty, for example, freedom for those who are in prison and the oppressed that's promised in Isaiah 61. Where was that coming from? From Jesus to John the Baptist? Lots of reasons for John the Baptist to raise questions. Jesus and John, had been proclaiming the kingdom of God, the kingdom of heaven, according to Matthew. And yet, where were the evidences of this transforming reality of the kingdom? Do note that Jesus does not condemn John for his questions or what some people call his doubt. Go and tell John what you see and hear. And then give attention to the list of things that Jesus says. The blind see, the lame walk, the lepers are cleansed, the deaf hear, the dead are raised, and the poor have the gospel preached to them. Now think about the blind, the lame, the lepers, the dead, etc. And think now back to chapters 8 and 9 and the list of miracles that were there. And to chapter 10, the kinds of miracles that Jesus essentially told his disciples that they were to perform. And I think you will see there's, it's almost as if Jesus says, go and tell John what you see and hear, and tell him the story of chapter 8 and 9 primarily. Now, I think I'll have some supplemental material maybe, or did in chapters 8 and 9, that show the, particularly from Isaiah, but Old Testament parallels, or if you want to call them prophecies that seem to relate to this kind of miracle-doing ministry of Jesus. And all of which is to say, these are signs that God reigns, or that God is the king. Then you have a little section in which Jesus chastises the Jewish folks of his time who are not accepting of his messiahship. Sodom and Gomorrah will rise up in judgment against you because you've seen greater things than they saw. Even Tyre and Sidon likewise will have seen greater things. And then the final section, really a two-part section, verses 25 to the end of the chapter. Verses 25 through 27 sound like the Gospel of John. They're the most Johannine-sounding passage that you find anywhere in the Synoptic Gospels, which raises all kinds of critical sorts of questions, which I'm not concerned that you struggle with right now, unless you just find that an itch that you want to scratch. but to be aware of this sort of more sublime the Father in heaven and the Son relationship that's most clearly articulated in the Gospel of John, finds expression here in Matthew 11:25-27. Then do note 28 through 30, culminating, "My yoke is easy, my burden is light." The yoke of Jesus, and a note from the commentaries in particular, the role that yoke played as a metaphor for taking upon oneself, first of all, the yoke of the Torah, and that as a metaphor of the yoke of the Jewish covenant. And so eventually the bar mitzvah for Jewish boys was a taking upon themselves the yoke of the Torah. And Jesus compares essentially the cost, the commitment of following him, and the cost and the commitment of following Moses, and speaks to his particular yoke, and the more gentle, kindly commitment and requirement that he has to follow him. Finally, do note that as a carpenter, Jesus probably made yokes, and at least his Father did. And a number of commentators have wondered if my yoke is easy, paraphrase, my yoke's fit, our yoke's fit, was maybe an advertising slogan of that carpentry shop. Don't know. Hope you'll find his yoke gentle and fitting for you as you work this week. The Lord bless you.